I don't know anymore. I just don't know. I just can't even.
Crawling out of the dismal pit of marriage. Hey, y'all, today on the podcast, we're going to talk about how the Goodes got their groove back.
Oh, while having a whole lot of fun. No, really, this time.
Cue the music. Hi, and welcome back to As Goode as It Gets, the podcast, Season 1, Episode 5.
I'm Cris.
And I'm Mikey.
And welcome to our virtual kitchen table where we're hanging out with the Crock Posse.
Yup.
So last we left you in a very depressing place.
Yeah.
And so we're going to hopefully, well, you left still some of the
I left people some hanging. I left y'all hanging.
Well, you left some sad stuff still.
Yeah.
But then we're going to get a lot cheerier eventually.
Yeah.
In this episode, because this is all about how we've been through the trenches and we come back out of it.
Sometimes it takes a little tragedy to kind of snap you out of something, and that's where we'll start. So we'll get dismal for a minute, and then we'll get better. I promise you. I mean, look where we're at now. It gets better. I promise. So if there's somebody out there,
it's gonna get worse before it gets better. But go ahead.
That's life. For anybody who's listening who might be new to a marriage or going, "Gosh, it's rough right now." We're both living proof. You can get through it. Last time we left you, we were in a mess in a marriage, and I became a mess because I just lost a friend. And it translated more into our marriage, but not for very long. I left you guys with Eric got shot.
Yes.
He was working for Brinks. I'm playing with stuff here on the table. Sorry, this is a rough one to talk about. Eric gets shot. I'm at work, and I come in for a break, and they had a TV on at the time, and the news was coming on, and there was a breaking news report. And I remember Eric Kopf coming on the news channel 13 here in Indy. And he had said that a Brinks security guard had just been shot. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got a friend who's a Brinks security guard. I wonder if he knows the guy. And then later on, I had heard that there was no more updates other than that they were trying to capture the guy and they couldn't find who it was, who had shot the Brinks security guard, and they never released their name. So I went to the phones and I called and left Eric a voicemail saying, "Hey man, I just heard somebody got shot. Did you know who it was? You okay? Just checking on you." And then I go back out and work. I come back in a little bit later for lunch, and there's Eric Kopf on there on channel 13 once again, and he had said that the security guard had died from his injuries sustained in a shooting over on the east side of Indy. And then he released the name, and they said it was Eric. And I'm in a break room full of rough and tumble men, and I lost it. I left. I ran out of there because I'm like, I can't be in there right now. And I called upstairs to my boss, my yard master at the time. Name's Earl. And Earl was another, he was one of the old style railroaders, real rough, talked all real rough and tumble. And I was training a guy at the time on the job that I was doing. And the guy that I was training was a good dude. He was real sharp. He knew what he was doing. And I called upstairs and said, Earl, I just found out a buddy of mine was shot and killed, and I'm not in a very good place right now. I said, can I just go out and finish my job and just get done so I can go home? And he said, is that guy with you? Does he know his butt from a hole in the ground? I was like, yeah, he knows what he's doing. He goes, get out of here. He'll cover it. And so John, who was my trainee, covered the rest of my shift, and I went home. And I was lost. I didn't know what to do. I'd never lost a friend before, and I'd definitely never lost anybody to violence before. And I was in shock. And I think I was in shock I think my side of the family, especially my dad, has a 3-day rule. And it's like the first 2 days, you're just kind of in a daze, or you handle it, you act like it didn't happen. And then on that third day, it just hits you. And that happened with me, because by the third, I took the next couple days off. And by that third day, I was a wreck, an absolute mess. And that's when it hit me what happened. So I went to the liquor store, because that's always a good idea when you're in a bad place. I bought a big old bottle of Captain Morgan because that's the drink of choice whenever you're in a low funk. And you were at work, and I sat all day long and drank and drank and drank. And by the time you got home, I was incoherent, babbling, bawling. And I specifically remember in this stupor that I was in, sitting at the table, the kitchen table in our little house trailer. And you had this plastic rollaway cart. And you had made dinner, and you sat and talked to me, and you were like so sympathetic to me, and just, I'm so sorry, and is there anything I can do? You didn't say anything about the fact I was completely trashed and hammered. You were just there for me, and because you had no idea what I was going through, and you told me that. You're like, I can't imagine what you're going through, and I'm so sorry. And I was so broken. Because now I'm mad because here's this woman who I'm not getting along with clearly, and all she wants to do is be there for me. And I can't be mean to somebody who I was clearly being mean to for the second 2 years of our marriage because I didn't know how to speak life at the time. And you were just there for me. But I remember being so mad that somebody took my friend away from me who had also been very supportive to me. And I remember just beating on that rollaway cart, and I hit it so hard that it blew the wheels out from the bottom of it, which scared the time out of you.
Yeah.
And I went to bed, and I woke up completely hungover. My head hurt. But I laid there and I was so low because I lost my perfect job. I was losing my marriage that I wanted to make perfect. I'd lost a dear friend who meant the world to me, and the only thing I had going for me is I was a good railroader.
And I think I was at the point where I wasn't really good friends, but I knew that he was a very good friend of yours.
Yeah.
And I think I was like, oh man, every time tragedy hits, we don't deal well with it. And I don't know what this is going to do.
Yeah.
And
I could imagine you were scared.
And, I never was one that even enjoyed drinking alcohol. It wasn't something that I ever gravitated towards. So it was kind of a foreign concept to me that's what you were going towards. I didn't know what to do.
And I just
I was lost.
Yeah, I just wanted to get numb is all they wanted to do.
And I was just afraid that this was going to shove you further into this like depressed state and I didn't know. I honestly did not know what to do.
I didn't either at the time. And we had the sit downs prior to this happening, where we're like, I remember the night that you said, I'm done. I'm not going to initiate a divorce. I'm not going to be the one to do it unless you want to do it. We walked into this together. We'll walk out of it together. No harm, no foul, but I can't do this anymore.
Right.
And
I think what I was communicating at the time was, I'm done wallowing in all this. If you don't want to be happy together, I'm going to just go on about my life, and we're coexisting at this point.
Yeah. And if you want to take it a step further, it's going to be you. If you want out, you let me know. And I remember in my head so many times saying, I want out. I just want out,
Right.
But I was scared to say it because, and again, here's the little threads that I talked about before that were keeping us together. One was the guy who married us, Roger Bear. Mm-hmm. Because he had great advice, and he just kept, the one thing he said is you give it 30 years and then you can talk about it. But I didn't want to let him down.
No, and I will say I would have been okay coexisting and not, I think at that point I was just letting it go. Okay, we'll coexist until whatever is going on is different. I know I did not want to get divorced, but I also did not think we were living the dream. That's for sure.
And I was sitting there, Roger was in my head. I, of course, didn't want to let your parents down because they'd meant so much to us and done so much
Sure.
for us. And they'd been there for us for a lot of stuff. And I still fear your father, but I really feared him back then. And I didn't want him to kill me. More, it would probably been your mom more than your dad. But
I don't know.
But then Eric dies. I'm in this funk. I'm in this 3-day haze, and I end up getting completely trashed. And then I woke up, and I remember just sitting there talking to myself and saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing? You have a failing marriage. You failed in your attempt at this dream career that you've always wanted to be. You always wanted to be a superhero. This was your only way to be there. You failed at that, and now you're fallen into a bottle in order to numb yourself from the pain of all of it, not just losing a friend, but you've lost everything, and now you're losing your mind." I really was. I was slowly slipping into this, quickly slipping into this dark, deep depression that just absolutely was wrecking everything around me. And I prayed. And I think that was the first time that I really sincerely in my life. I mean, I'd prayed for things, and I can remember different times that I had really prayed, but that was the moment where I dropped it all. And I said, "God, I can't do this on my own. I cannot do this on my own because I'm failing miserably." And that I came to you, and I'm like, I can't be this way. I can't do this. And you knew what I meant, that I didn't mean I couldn't do us. I couldn't do life. I couldn't do anything, but I can't exist this way, and I need you. I lost my friend. I can't lose my best friend. I can't lose the person that I chose to spend the rest of my life with, that means the most to me, that's supposed to mean the most to me. Let's get it back.
And I think the first time I realized that was actually going to be a reality and not just us continuing to fumble things around. I was still working as a job coach. I was actually driving at one point, and you called. I was driving with one of my clients, and you called, and so I pulled over, and out of nowhere, because up until this point, if we ever went anywhere or did anything, I made all the plans. I did all the, I planned vacations. I booked the hotels. I lined it all up. And you called me in the middle of a work day. I think you got a postcard in the mail from this random company in Tennessee, sent from God, that it was a postcard. They're not even in business anymore.
Yeah.
But Sunset,
I know, I just checked.
Yeah, Sunset Cottages had cabins in the mountains in Tennessee,
Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg.
and that's where actually we didn't honeymoon with Sunset Cottages, but that's where we had spent our honeymoon, was the Smoky Mountains. And so,
and we had gone back there a
Right.
couple times.
Yeah. And so you call, well, no, not before, not to the cabins we had. And this is the first time.
Oh, was this the first time?
Yes, you called me. I'm in the middle of my job, and like I said, I have a consumer with me, and you call and you tell me that you have made all the plans, that we are going to Tennessee for the weekend, and that you had booked us a cabin in the mountains, which was we didn't do that back then.
No.
We didn't do that. And that you had made all the plans, and that all I needed to do was pack my bags and come with you. And I remember hanging up the phone, and the gal that was with me was like, "Girl, your man just booked you a romantic weekend. And she was making such a big deal about it. And I was just like, what has happened to him? Because this is like completely out of left field.
Yeah, I never planned anything.
This was not like, I mean, again, we had never vacationed, not like that. I mean, we were always penny pinching when it came to vacations and all that kind of stuff. And you had booked this really nice place and we were going to go away. And it was like completely a shock. And I can remember because like I was sitting there in shock and the gal with me was sitting there in shock. And we were just like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go away for the weekend. And I remember going away for that weekend and being very uncertain about like, what is this? Because like we had been fighting for like cats and dogs for 2 years. And so it was like, okay, we're going to go away for the weekend and you can't run away anywhere. You're going to have to be, we're in the cabin in the middle of the woods. And so, but that was the beginning of starting to piece things back together.
Yeah, that was the that was the start of it. And we had taken a couple more trips. We always went back to Tennessee.
Well, yeah. Once we realized, oh gosh, that became kind of our place, like our little retreat.
It was a retreat. It was therapeutic
to kind of like reconnect, go hiking, enjoy the outdoors, and just enjoy each other and get away from everything. And it became a tool that we used to like regularly get away from life and everything else and focus back on getting connected again. But that, I mean, it totally was out of left field, I mean, I'm pretty sure because I was like, how did you even, I didn't even know these places existed back then. Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty common knowledge now, but back then I had no idea that they even existed. And I think they sent us a random mailer. Like,
I got lucky.
I'm not sure, but you booked it and took care of it. And that was the beginning of, us kind of starting to like go, oh, okay. 'Cause I think at the same time I had gotten to the point where it was like, okay, well, I probably can't have kids is what I've told myself. And you've gotten to the point where you're like, I've got this really good job. I'm going to be a railroader now. I'm not going to be a cop. So we kind of were like resetting our vision of what our own individual lives were going to look like. And we were starting to grow up a little bit.
And it's still, I mean, it wasn't easy. It definitely wasn't. But it was like all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're going to do life together.
Right.
We're not going to walk away from it. So we've got to do some things where we enjoy each other.
Right. And I think that's when we started painting this vision of, well, while we had always thought we were gonna have children and going to like be a cop and all this kind of stuff, we started to paint a vision of, well, there's a lot of freedom in us just being a couple and having well-paying jobs and being able to get away and do some really fun things. And so we went head first into that. And when we did that, we really started investing our time in each other.
And I think anytime that we started to notice, oh, we need a break, we need something, we'd book a trip and we go to Tennessee. And I don't know which trip it was. I know exactly where it was. I can tell you the name of the cabin. Mm-hmm. I can tell you everything that happened in that whole weekend.
Yeah.
And we booked another trip to Tennessee. It was one of those impromptu, we're going to go.
My parents would always get aggravated us for, because, and this has been a tradition for a long, my parents always traveled like all over. They would go all different places out west and all different places like as a kid. And we would explore and visit all kinds of different places. But like, we would always be like, okay, we love these cabins in Tennessee. And so every time we got a chance to get away, we kept going back to the same place. And then after Addie was born, we went there a couple times, but then we got hooked on taking Addie to Florida and then eventually to Disney. And then we would always go back to the same places. So I think my parents are like, explore more, do more things. And we're like going,
the same place
but
twice.
we enjoy. We're getting there. We definitely have gotten there now. But that's not to say Tennessee became a really big part of our lives in that it was our retreat. It's not too far from where we live, so we could
about a 6-hour drive.
Easily do a weekend in Tennessee.
And so we did. There were many times we go down but one weekend, it was like each time it was like a step ladder. Each time we'd go back, we'd get better and better and better. And then I remember it was another one of those where I was working my tail off, you were working your tail off. We were trying to make it work between us, and we were starting to get more involved in one of the churches we were going to at the time. But we were really working on us. But it was like, it was time. It was time to book one. So we book a trip. Serenity View was the name of the cabin.
Yes.
And I got off work, you got home, and we drove down, and by the time we got down there, it was dark. But it was like a 6-hour drive to get there, but it seemed like it took maybe an hour because we talked the whole way down. Just conversation after conversation, and enjoyed it. Never once disagreed, had a good time. We get to Serenity View, and it was completely pitch dark on the side of this mountain, had no idea where we were at, had no idea what it was going to look like the next day, and we wake up the next morning, I opened up the blinds, and it was like the most beautiful, breathtaking view ever. It was the best cabin we ever stayed at. It really was. That's why they named it that. But the whole weekend was amazing. It was romantic. We explored. We had a good time. We never argued. I remember because I was like, when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? We never argued. And then the trip home, again, seemed like an hour when it was 6. It was the perfect weekend. And for me, it was like, this is the way it could be. This is the way marriage could be. If you talk nice to her, she will be happier. If you treat her with respect, she will give it back. If you love on her more than just physically, if you learn to love on her heart, love will come other places. It was like, oh, this is how this works.
Yeah.
So we started to do that. And we did our own thing. We wanted to go somewhere. We went,
And I think for a very long time, we got pretty dead set on, we really like the freedom in all of this. We don't want kids. We're going to just be us. That's to me, I mean, we were best friends as far as like we were, but then from then on up to when we had Addie, was it about 7 years? It was we still had a lot to work on. It was not perfect after like
that.
We still didn't disagree. I mean, we still had disagreements.
Oh, there were times we fought like cats and dogs,
right.
But we knew it was like, there was like a stopping point, like, hey, we're not going back to that. Let's work it out.
No. We were, and along the way, I think the other pieces, like I mentioned before, I think last episode, we also, when we started kind of getting traction out of it, we were very clear that there was no hiding the fact to anyone that we had been through like the mill when it came to this. So in the church groups that we were in the friend circles we were in, everywhere we were very transparent about the fact that it got really bad, and now there is a light on the other side of the tunnel. And it took some time. It took a lot of faith. It took spiritual connection for both of us, and then it also took just kind of holding out hope for each other ultimately. And so, and I think that was a key to us keeping moving forward, because we weren't pretending like everything was perfect.
Yeah.
We weren't pretending. We didn't pretend like nothing ever happened. Like we put the big ugly mess out on the table and said, that's where we don't want to go anymore.
Yep.
We do not want that anymore because that really, really stunk.
Yep.
Like that was very painful. We were not speaking life to one another.
Mm-hmm.
We were not our best selves and anyhow. So, but it ended up being really good, and we ended up like really, really, really enjoying life and doing all kind. I mean, you were doing really well in the railroad. I was doing well in my job, and eventually got promotions, and eventually moved on to other jobs, and we were just kind of living life, and then we decided that we wanted to move out to the country.
Yep. Well, we were still, if you remember, we were still way deep in debt.
Oh, there
We
was
were
that
like,
side of it
because here, just because you make your marriage happier and better
No.
doesn't mean everything lifts.
No,
we still had the
or
responsibility.
the responsibility of the holes that we dug, but then on top of that, we also had like these really bad habits that we had created.
Well, we wanted to go out with friends. So
Yeah,
after
go-
church, we would always go to dinner.
Yes, and it wasn't, again, we weren't going to McDonald's, which would have probably fed our budget a lot better. We were going to sit down restaurants and all that kind of stuff.
And of course, when I'd go to a sit-down restaurant, I couldn't
Yeah.
have the burger. I had to have the steak and the shrimp and the fluffy.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're still working on you on that. But
No, I like steak.
But so, oh yeah, wait, hang on. No, we didn't. So we're still doing all that, but I'm sorry. Where are you wanting to go with this story?
I'm just that when we were in this pit.
Yes.
And I was in that funk.
Yes.
And so if I wasn't numbing myself with alcohol or chew, I had gone back especially when I was at the railroad.
Well, and food was a very, very big thing for both of us
Gosh,
too.
we would eat whatever we wanted. I gained a ton of weight, and the only thing that was help me anyway to keep it off was working on the railroad. And then I became a yardmaster, so I was in an office job, still eating like a fiend because now I was making really good money, I thought at the time.
Right.
And eating whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And we had racked up thousands of dollars in credit card debt.
Yes.
And
well, and I think it all boils down to that all those things were, well, one, they all started from a great source of pain. And then some of them became habits that just were easy ways to kind of band-aid when you're having a bad day. I mean, it may have not been that everything was falling apart anymore, but having a bad day, I'm going to go out and have an amazing meal or something like that.
I don't think Dave Ramsey was big at the time whenever we were first in debt. I don't remember because that was after Addie
that's what I was gonna say. We ended up doing one of those credit card counseling things and getting ourselves like paying everything off,
the debt consolidation,
and getting completely out of debt and working so hard at it. And then I think what ended up happening is then we decided, okay, we finally got our credit back to where it needs to be. Why don't we try to like move out to the country and have a nice home? And that was
we wanted a house. We wanted out of the house trailer.
Yeah. That was our next step. And so we went through that process and we found a wonderful home, and we very, very much enjoyed setting up house and all that kind of stuff.
And I think what I was getting at with that is, so we find this house, but the only way we got there was, and it started, I think, with those Tennessee trips and with, born out of a heartbreak and of us and losing a friend and almost losing a marriage, that we're like, we've got to work as a team,
right?
Or it's not going to work. That's the way marriage works, is we are a team. We are partners. We're business partners. We're friends. each other's counselor, you know? And one thing that Roger said back when he was counseling us for getting married was there's going to be times, you know, everybody says marriage should be 50-50. Well, a lot of times it's going to be 90-10, you know, and a lot of, I've got to say this as the man of the marriage here, the husband, a lot of that dark space we were in, you were like 99% of it to hold my 1% up because and there were times I was too, you know, I would do things to lift you up, but
I think that it's always ebb and flow like that. But and when each person is in a healthy space, it's less that way. When someone's not in a healthy space, and that can be for a lot of different reasons, that's when that kind of goes 90-10. And I knew you weren't in a healthy space. I knew that you were, but I was young and I didn't have a lot of counselors at that time, friends or advisors that could help me kind of, all I knew is I can do what I can do. And I can even remember, you know, I would read a lot. I would do a lot of devotions and those kinds of things. And I can remember, you know, just leaving you notes of encouragement because I didn't know what else to do because I was just kind of like, but I think part of the problem early on was for a long time, I expected you to make me happy. And that was like, that's a recipe for disaster. Like no other person can make you happy. Like you have to make. And I was happy.
The same way. I'm like, she's gonna, you know, she'll be the one to satisfy me, whether it's with food, physical, make me happy, make me laugh, and everything. Right. It's like,
no,
you know, you
that's
can't
not
rely.
How it works.
No,
you got to make yourself happy.
Yep.
But learning all of that and kind of going down that path, but. I think we kind of figured that out. We started figuring out how even like little things we would pick up along the way. Like I can remember learning to not start conversations with you always or you never. Like even that little, I can remember reading that somewhere and going, okay, that's fair. I don't want somebody coming at me saying you always, you know, forget to take out the trash or you never blah, 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 blah. That just dialing that language back, also using the phrases of, okay, like, I'm not sure what you mean, but this is how it makes me feel, like, and using those little things to kind of be like, I'm not trying to punch you. I'm just trying to communicate with you. And so it's just little things that we learned how to communicate. And it got us to a place where we did start working as a team. And when we started working as a team, we could pretty much do anything.
We could rule the world.
Yeah.
And we did. We ruled our world because we worked as a team for us to be better partners, to be a better couple.
Right.
Then we started to work as a team to get out of debt. So we stopped eating out all the time. We paid off our debts.
We totally climbed out of that hole.
Yep.
Now we went way back down in that hole and came back out again.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother story in a little bit.
Yeah.
But, we climbed out of that hole. We really, truly, I mean, we were starting to do some creative things together. We were starting to write some songs together. And it was like, this is like really fun.
That was the Tennessee trip down to Serenity View. That was, I remember that was the same weekend that the first American Idol winner was named. That was the weekend we lost Johnny Cash.
Oh, yeah.
Or was it June? No, I think it was Johnny.
All I know is the country music stations were playing that song "Hurt"
over and over. I think we lost
again.
Johnny Cash,
yeah.
and then I wanted to write a song, and it was was it the first song we wrote together, or was Thankful the first song we wrote together? No, I think it was
Megan's song was the first song we wrote together.
Megan's song for a couple of ours. Annie and Carla had a baby. We wrote Megan's song, and because I never thought I'd have a daughter, so. We gave that song away, and
it was a real sweet song.
Which we'll get to that, and maybe someday you guys will hear that song.
Yeah.
But it's also known as a Daddy's Prayer. I play it every once in a while. But we wrote "Kiss Me in Tennessee" together.
Yeah,
And
we started doing all kinds of like writing and we just started enjoying each other, which was like really, really fun.
Would you ever have thought then that we'd be doing what we're doing now? Like that creativity, that spark, like you had a spark, I had a spark. When we put the spark together, it was like, ooh, we had something,
Yeah,
you know?
I don't know. I mean, a lot of the things that we do now, like I didn't even know existed back then.
Right.
So it's hard to kind of think about that. But I do know that when we would sit down and we would bounce things off of each other, it was like it had an electric kind of thing to it. Like, oh, wow, that like being creative is a very personal kind of thing. And so when you can connect creatively to someone else, that's a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
It's a fun, and that's something I've always enjoyed in my professional career, is finding people I can bounce things off of. And it's fun that we have always been able to do that once we figured out how to communicate to one another.
Yep. But the creativity, the spark that we had, you know, I think that helped us too, that we saw we're both creative. So if we started doing things together, you know, we traveled together, we wrote together, we had fun. We finally started having fun because, and it lifted me
right
out of that funk, that depression, you know, it was gone, and it was my choice to get it gone. You know, I looking back on it now, older, I would have looked at my 23, 24-year-old self and said, dude, you need to go get counseling.
Right.
But had you not been there, I mean, I'd have been completely lost. So
I think ultimately it boiled down to it was a spiritual struggle for you, and you had to come to terms with that.
I was fighting a lot of demons. But
yeah, I think we so we kind of got into a groove, and then like I said, we decided we were going to move to the country, and we moved to the country, and all of a sudden this, like, we had been pretty adamant up until that point. No kids.
No, yeah. Oh, yeah. We were done. There was no kids going to happen.
Well, because the other piece of it is part of me not, like, part of me being down was, you know, the being told that one more strike and you're out, so to speak. And I just didn't want to, I was done. Like I had come to terms with it in my life. I was going to just go down the professional route of things, and that's the way it was going to be. And you know, we hadn't been through a whole lot of tragedy since we finally figured out this puzzle. So it was kind of a scary thing that are we going to invite tragedy back into this, and how are we going to handle it?
We were flying really high. We were, like I said, we were going wherever we wanted to, which was always Tennessee. But
much to my parents.
At that time, we were out of debt. We paid off, I think, both vehicles even. We were like where we didn't have any debt. Yeah. Other than I think we owed money on the trailer. Yeah. But we were happy. Yes. And we buy this house. Yes. That we're living in now. And it had an acre behind it and nothing but woods behind it. And so it was a country boy's dream too. Yeah. And I remember when we bought the house, I said the first week that I'm here, I'm going to run naked in the backyard and nobody's going to see it. I ended up not doing it because it rained. Not remembering if that was the same rain or not that we found out the first leak in our roof. But welcome to home ownership. Yes. But we were, again, now we're in our house. Yes. We sold the trailer. We got out of all that and we're living in our house, and it was the little romantic things that we did back and forth that I thought were fun, you know? And I remember coming home from work one day, and it was cooler, so it had to have been around October of that year. And I come in the front door, and Cris says, Mikey, come in here. So I go in the living room, and I think you'd even maybe build a fire or something. But
that would have been a miracle, because I really stink at that.
But the living room looked great. We had new furniture in there, and I come in there and I'm like, what? And she hits the radio, and I remember it was Rob Thomas. Yes. Streetlight Symphony, which we loved that song. Yes. And she grabbed a hold of me right off the bat when I got in the front door, and we danced.
Yes.
And it was like, that was another moment. I just remember like, oh, this is what it's supposed to be like.
Yes.
It was the little spontaneous things and the little sweet moments. And it's a whole lot of sweet moments like that can make your marriage better.
It truly is the little things, because like the little notes of encouragement, the little like, and I will say, if we're even having a rough patch now, I will try to go back to that, of try and find some way to kind of like bring hope back into something. And so anyhow, but that's when I think then we now have a home in the country. We've done all these things to kind of build our life. We're in a really good place. And then I think the thought of, and now we're 9 years in to our marriage at this point, or close to it. And then we start thinking,
I'd gotten a supervisor job at work.
Yeah.
And
we start thinking, okay,
maybe we try.
Well, maybe we try for a baby, which was like the most scariest thing in the world, because again, we hadn't had a whole lot of tragedy since we had figured out things, and it was pretty much a sure bet that we were going to have tragedy. Is what it boiled down to.
We knew. I mean,
at least in our minds, that's what we thought was going to happen.
We were in this room.
Oh, when I told you.
When you told me.
Yes. And so I did, I found out I was pregnant. And at the time I was like a complete Diet Coke addict. Like, I drank Diet Coke from the time that I woke up in the morning to the time that I would go to bed at night, constantly. And as soon as and I'm not saying that, let me clarify. As soon as I found out that I was pregnant, like, I put the Diet Coke away. Just like, and it was, which would have been like, not because I think that that's like, if you drink Diet Coke while you're pregnant, by all means. I was just terrified of everything. Let's just be honest. After having lost 2 babies before Miss Ad. And so I was just like, whatever I can do, I'm going to stop anything I can think. I'm going to put myself in a bubble and walk around for however long I can get away with it. And so then I told you, and then we told everybody, and we started going down those 9 months. And I will say those were really, really, really a special time, because we were so afraid of every little bump in the road. We had found a new doctor who was really, really great about like checking everything and really making sure, like, she knew my history. She knew what was like, she knew that we were scared to death. And we did really well until about, I think it was week 22. And all of a sudden I started bleeding. And we were terrified.
I was scared before that because, you said you're pregnant. Of course, we're excited, and we eventually tell our families, hey, we're expecting again. And, of course, you get the, oh, yay, you get the excited. Then you also get the, what are you going to do if it doesn't work out again? Yeah. I'm like, what the crap, people? Be happier.
That was in our minds anyways.
And I want to go back on something real quick. I want to go, I keep bringing your dad up, but back at the second miscarriage.
Yes.
We had talked, and I had people, family, friends, everybody would call, when they say, well, it wasn't in God's plan for that to happen, or God didn't want it to happen. Like it was. So that really helped me in my spiritual journey, because now I'm ticked off at God, because I'm like, dude, why would you take my baby away? Why would you help us in, clearly we're not in a very good spot. So, not that a baby was going to help, but it surely didn't help my thoughts on, this generous God that I was reading about. And I remember your dad. Totally, he became like this wisest man in the world to me when he said this. But he said, you know what? And he had no idea, or at least I hadn't told him what people had been telling me. And I surely to goodness wasn't going to come to you and say, yeah, everybody's calling me and telling me that, the God said it wasn't supposed to happen. But your dad said, he goes, you know what? A lot of people might tell you that, God didn't want this to happen, or, it wasn't in God's timing or whatever. God will let you know when it's your turn to have a baby, but until then, I guess it's not your turn. And he's like, I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a minute. He said, God doesn't necessarily make the bad things happen, but he's there when they do.
Right.
And that was a turning point for me in my head to make things better.
Right.
Because I couldn't run to you, I couldn't run to alcohol. I couldn't run to anything else because it wasn't going to work. When you run back to God, that's when it's like nobody else can be there for me but you.
Right.
And you're going to get me through it. And so when we started realizing that, that's when our marriage got better. And he provided. He gave us and even before we got Miss Ad, he gave us the best 9 months.
Right. And I would say we were very, very close during those 9 months.
Oh my gosh.
And we kind of trekked up this mountain, this big scary mountain that, because I can remember, at 22 weeks, I was bleeding and terrified because this was the furthest we had ever gotten. And I was just like, no, not again. We can't do this. Not again. And it ended up being fine. She was fine. Everything was fine. I just had a situation that they had to take care of, but it wasn't anything that was threatening her. And so, but that whole time, we didn't know she was a she. We thought
there's no way.
We thought that, I'm sorry. You have a family history of pretty much nothing but boys. Prior to Miss Ad's 70 years, only boys were born to your side of the family.
I've got 4 older brothers, and the last female on the Goode side was my Aunt Doris. And by the time Addie was born, she was mid-70s.
Right. And so you had convinced yourself we were going to have a baby boy, and I knew it in my bones that we were going to have a girl. And it did not look like we would have a girl on paper, but
she was a big one.
But not just that. It was just the likelihood.
I had history. Yeah, I had history on my side. Dude, we were going to conquer the world. I had my mindset that we were going to have a boy. And of course I was going to raise him as a boy, as a Goode boy.
Yes.
And
so I might have used your arrogance in this situation to get my way. Because we were arguing over what the names of our child would be. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to have a Miss Ad. I wanted an Adeline, which is Addie's full name. Yeah. And you pretty much didn't care what the girl's name was because we weren't going to have a girl. So I was just like, okay, if we have a boy, I don't think I was giving you to let you have the boy name, but I was like, so if we have a girl, I can name the girl whatever I want. And you're like, yeah, sure. And I'm like, okay, because I knew we were going to have a girl. And so when we went and we had the ultrasound, you truly were in shock when they told. I was like, "Yep, I knew we were going to have a girl." He was in shock.
But even before we get to that, we talked about how it was the best 9 months. We were together everywhere, all the time.
Right.
I was ready to do anything for you. I was terrified, and I didn't tell you that at the time. I could fight to one of my brothers about it, that I was absolutely petrified.
Well, we were terrified that, any step of the way. It was like carrying precious cargo to finally get to a finish line that we had started 9 years prior. Like, It was like, because ultimately, I mean, I don't know how far in the story you want to go. Ultimately, it came down to Addie was a very, very big baby. And
she still is.
And they came to me because my doctor knew my history and knew that we had all this tragedy, and we were getting close to time. And at one point they thought she was going to be around 11 pounds. I kept saying 11 pounds and the doctor kept correcting me, going 11 pounds, 2 ounces, 11 pounds, 2 ounces. And so, but she was so concerned because I had this history with pregnancy loss that I was going to be upset at the fact that she was recommending a C-section, because she knew that in some circles that isn't well accepted, and that some mothers really do want to try, but to go through natural childbirth or those kinds of things. But her main concern was because of our previous history and because of how large Addie was, that they were deeply concerned that it could cause that we weren't going to get to the finish line unless we did a C-section.
Yep.
And I just looked at her and I was like,
when you want to schedule it?
I'm like, listen. Because she was trying to be very sensitive to my feelings, you know, as a woman, and like, would I feel like, as a mom and all that kind of stuff, you know, do I feel... She didn't want to rob me from childbirth is pretty much what she was trying to say. And that experience as a woman. And I was just like, look, I have carried this baby for the last 9 months, and I've carried her with like tiptoeing through this pregnancy the entire time.
And you had some pain too.
And,
the bleeding at 22 weeks, and then like a couple weeks before
Addie came,
that last checkup,
I ended up in the emergency room. And so like we were carrying this baby across the finish line. I'm like, I don't care what you have to do. Like, if you tell me to go through natural childbirth is the safest way to get her from here to here, then we will do that. If you tell me that I need a C-section and that's the safest way to get her here, that's what we're going to do. I don't care about me as and I'm not disrespecting. That's where my mental state was.
Right.
Like, we had been through all this loss. We had been through all these things. We're at the final finish line. I don't care about anything except for I want my baby.
Yep.
Period. And so that's what we ended up scheduling a C-section 2 days before my birthday.
Mm-hmm.
So Miss Ad came along.
Yeah. It was a fun ride. That 9 months was, like I'd said it before, that was the best out of all up to that point in our marriage. Those 9 months were the best. I wanted to be around you all the time. I was happy to go anywhere and do anything for you. I remember I went to an auction with my brother, and it was like in Southern Illinois. So we had to drive all the way there, which was like 3 or 4 hours. We were at this thing for like 12 hours, then drove all the way back. And I remember coming upstairs, it's like 3 or 4 in the morning. I'm dead on my feet. And I remember laying in the bed, and you're like, oh, honey, I'm so hungry. Would you go downstairs and get me a banana? And it was the first time in, I think by that time was like 8 months or 8.5. It was really close to you having Ad.
Right.
And I'm like, honey, I am so tired. Could you just this one time go downstairs and get your own banana? And so you did. You're like, okay. So you got up, and it was dark, and you fell. You got to the last step and thought it was you were going to the floor, and there was one more step. And I remember hearing this huge thud and you yelling. I was up out of that bed, and I'm like, "You okay?" And you twisted your knee. I remember that.
Right.
But you were fine. But
Yeah. I didn't
felt,
fall onto the ground. I just tripped.
But in my head, you
Right.
launched yourself off the balcony.
Right.
And I felt so horrible. It was like the first time I'd failed you in that whole pregnancy,
No.
But
We were fine.
when we found out that it was going to be a girl, it was going to be a boy. It was always going to be a boy. Remember MySpace was big back then, and we had these little blogs. Remember on the MySpace, and that was the start of where we're at now.
Yeah.
But you started doing the blogging thing on there where you could write your own stories.
Yes.
And title them and all that. It was so cool, and I started doing it too. And I remember we got the news and saw the little girl on the ultrasound. And I was completely in shock. I was hysterical. I was like dumbfounded. Because now I have a girl. I knew how to handle a boy because I grew up a boy. I grew up being handled as a boy.
Oh.
I knew what life was going to be like. I had no idea how to handle a girl. And I wrote this blog post, and I don't remember if I saved it. I wish I had. I wish I had saved those old posts, that old post. But I remember writing on that. I just knew it was going to be a boy. We were going to conquer the world. We were going to go hunt deer, go fishing, get dirty, play in the mud, where I could see the little boy in bib overalls, all muddy and just having a good time.
I'm pretty sure your little girl's done almost
And
all
we
those
were gonna
things
go,
with you.
We were going to go shooting. He was going to be my boy. I was going to raise him to be a man. And I wrote in the post, and we find out it's a girl. I just said, I'm lost. I don't know what to do with a girl. I said, I was raised to know what to do to girls, but I was not raised to know what to do with a girl. So I have no idea how to raise a girl in the middle of this world. And I got a comment from a friend of mine who I hadn't really talked to since high school. And she was a young mother right out of high school, and she was raising these kids, and we kind of reconnected through MySpace. That was before Facebook and all that. That's how all your friends reconnected. And she had commented on there. She goes, best advice I can give you is you don't treat her like a princess. You treat her like an honor student. You don't praise her for her beauty more than you praise her for her brains. And when she grows up, she may be beautiful, but, do you want your daughter to be the prom queen or the valedictorian? And, you raise her with respect. You raise her, you treat her with respect is what
right.
the overall thing was. And that, you praise her for her brains more than her beauty.
And for the record, you can be both.
Oh, you can. You are. So, that was good right there. Did you hear how subtle that was?
No, I was not.
You could be beautiful and smart, but I think she knew how to read what I was saying, that, as a guy, you're going to be praising your girls for, that girls think they have to be beautiful more than anything else. And
I think that's different now.
But it was sage advice to me at the time that I was like, oh. Because as a boy, all you want to do is, learn how to take a punch and spit. And so I didn't know what to do with this girl. And to this day, I still remember it was like the sweetest advice I'd ever gotten.
Yes.
I'll always thank Mandy for it.
Yes. But I also have to come back to this. And I think we're kind of drifting into the Miss Ad talk that's supposed to be next episode.
Oh, no, we're just to that point.
Oh, but I will say as a teaser or that you were incredibly well suited to be a girl daddy and always have been. And you are an amazing daddy to Miss Ad. And I...
Well, thank you.
Yes. And she's so incredibly lucky to have you in her life, and I think she would tell you that too. And as for getting dirty, going fishing, going hunting, like all those things you listed, and
she's
done them all, and more so, and she's wore the princess dress, and she's been the honor student, so she's like all over the place. She is individually absolutely 100% Miss Ad, and she is the joy of our lives.
She, to me, is, I mean, she's our kid. She's a part of the team. She's a part of what we do here. You know, just, I mean, she's right. If you can see behind Cris, she's right there. And I don't mean this in a fleeting way, but she was, I don't want to say this the wrong way. She was a reward in, like, she is a prize. She is, had we not said, we're going to work this out.
Right.
Had, you think of like any different life decisions you would have made, had we not had a sequence of events happen early on in our marriage, a learning stumbling block of marriage.
More than a reward, she was the fruit of that labor.
That's much better. That's better than prize. Yeah. Because had we not, learned how to love each other the right way and learn to take time for each other and to honestly, to shut the rest of the world out and make us the priority in our lives, which is the way a marriage should be. Right. Then we would not have gotten added.
No, and I think she's a force in and of herself, and she came along at the right time and has just completed the picture. So, but that's for next episode.
Yep, we'll talk about that little redneck. Actually,
she'll tell you she's a hillbilly.
When she was 3 years old, she did something stubborn. I said, "You redneck." She goes, "I'm not a redneck. I'm a hillybilly." But we'll get to that hillybilly in the next segment of Hello Miss Ad, and talk about how now we've got this new marriage, we've got this new life, we've got this new kid, and what the next steps were for us to get to where we are now. But we can't do that without thanking you, because you did recipes.crock.com. And because of recipes.crock.com, and they're wonderful recipes on there, we're able to do this. And also because of our patrons over at patreon.com/recipes.crock. Our Crock partners over there and everybody else that has joined in and financially supporting what we do bought these microphones. I'm going to keep talking about the microphones because I love them.
Really likes the microphones.
I really like the mics, guys. Thank you so much. But we want to thank you guys for supporting us. If you want to partner with us there, you've got different levels you can do it with, and we'll be happy to have you. We will thank you. We will give you more content like we're doing now. And we just really appreciate you guys coming along for the ride.
And if you are watching this on YouTube and you would like to hear the next episode, you can binge listen to the entire season 1 podcast. Mm-hmm. If you look in the description down below, you will see the link, so you can go and binge listen to all that, or tune in next week to hear the next episode.
So if you're listening to it on the podcast, you're going to listen to it and kind of imagine what it's like. If you want to watch it on the YouTubes, you can see my pretty face. But again, we want to thank you guys. Yeah. Thank you, because I know especially last episode and kind of the beginning of this one was a little bit of a rough part to go through. We have to. It's our story. And again, maybe there's somebody out there that we're speaking life into through it to say that we've been there. We know what it's like.
Yes, and this first season is just us kind of telling our story to connect with you guys. We're not going to always be so deep and so
No, that
heavy.
was about
We're going to have some fun eventually.
We right now are in the middle of this season of the podcast.
Well, we're literally almost 10 years into the marriage.
Oh, gosh.
See how that worked?
Hey, it worked out pretty good. It's working out pretty good so far anyway. So stay with us, and we'll come back again on the next episode, and we'll talk a lot more about Miss Ad and the new adventures and the taste of success. And we're going to have a whole lot of fun with it.
Yes, we will.
We'll talk to you later.
All right.
Cue the music.